When the first Spitfire prototype flew on March the 5th, 1936, the short flight would prove a milestone in British aviation history. When the test pilot touched down, he was elated. He immediately told Mitchell and the design team at Supermarine, "Don't change a thing." This plane was faster and more manoeuvrable than anything else in the air at the time. It was also lethally beautiful. It's remembered as the saviour of Britain, and some of the people who had most respect for it were its enemies. As a point of honour, captured Luftwaffe pilots would always claim they'd been shot down by a Spitfire.
How operatic do you think 1984, the novel, is?
Well, it's one of those rare 20th century novels that lends itself very well to the operatic form, because opera is about larger-than-life ideas, about larger-than-life themes, and you don't sing in opera, at least, about anything else. The voice is larger than life, so it's always about extreme situation.
The novel cries out to be treated as an opera. It is highly dramatic, very concise. Storylines are crystal clear, and each personality, each personage, is delineated with remarkable clarity.
For over 40 years, Robert Crumb has reluctantly played the role of America's best-loved underground cartoonist. He's famous for creations such as Fritz the Cat, the Keep On Truckin' Guys, Angel Food McSpade, and the crazed guru Mr. Natural, characters that have proved both influential and deeply controversial. For the past decade, Crumb has retreated to a tiny village in the south of France. His favourite toys, old records and memorabilia providing the ideal environment in which to work.
What brought you here to France?
It's actually, very pleasant. And French people being discreet the way they are, they kind of leave me alone and I leave them alone, and it's fine. It's a beautiful place. You're not allowed to mention the name of it, so I don't want, the fans to find me, but it's a nice place to live. Brought all my stuff from America. It's exactly the same stuff I had over there, so I just kind of have my own little world wherever I go. I always liked being invisible in a place, and then I can actually sit in a corner and draw people and watch and see things that are going on, but when you're the center of attention, you can't do that. It's very uncomfortable. It's like being exposed, and the light suddenly turned on you. Yeah.
We meet Caro to try to discover his desires and motivations, and to try to find out what this surprisingly youthful 80-year-old wants to do next. I feel like Gulliver standing here over Tate Caro.
It's a giant 1/20th model of Tate Britain, and this is how we set out the show and begin to decide where things should go.
It's a great way to get a sneak preview. So here we are in the 50s, and then we're moving fairly quickly through into the abstract sculpture, and here we are.
Yes,
we're in the 60s, the new sculpture already.
That was 1963, before I went to the States.
The shock of the new sculpture.
Something like that. And this is early one morning.
And that's the month of May?
That's month of May.
One of the big changes in your work in the 70s seemed to be that you used colour less and you let the actual material itself rust or not rust, show itself. What was the reason for that?
Well, I think it was very much that we were coming out of such a sort of dream time. The 60s were wonderful. They were about possibilities.
I don't do anything, you know. There's a script, there's sets, there's a light, cameraman, there's people that have to, and there's actors primarily. But somebody has to be there to say go and to say stop.
Violence is the most obscene thing. I'm totally against it, but it's there, all over the place. How can you ignore it? I tried to make it in Natural Born Killers a satiric interpretation, by which I mean it was an over-exaggeration of violence. There was nothing realistic in that violence. It was
including,
done,
of course, the used enemy
but in
as
America
well.
it was looked at literally as violence.
You've got this legendary reputation for sniffing what's next in the air. What would you say is going to be the next big thing, culturally, musically, visually?
I think that what is interesting now is the possibility of a new art form coming about. And I think that will be based on the DVD, and it will be something that is inseparably visual and musical at the same time.
The Wizard of Electricity, the Napoleon of the light bulb. Whatever you want to call him, one thing is certain. Thomas Edison has had more influence on our world than any other scientist in history.
Many of Edison's inventions sit in our homes a century later in practically the same state as when they left his laboratory. It's an astonishing and unrivaled achievement. No other inventor has left such a lasting legacy and been so prolific.
I'm Liz.
And I'm June.
The
3 p.m. ladies.
Like most people, we know nothing whatsoever about art, but we know what we like, don't we, June?
We certainly do, and what we dislike.
And we're willing to go and look at anything that's new and exciting, anything, as long as it's called art.
The Culture Show has invited us to go and look at various things and give our honest opinion.
Look, let's go into the woods.
This week has seen major London landmarks bathed in Beijing red, and it's all to mark the beginning of a new season of exhibitions and shows. Now, there's nothing new about cultural imports from China. Think of printing, tea, kites, but one thing is clear. Stand by for a new wave of Chinese cultural diplomacy. Leading the charge are the 3 emperors at the Royal Academy, with fabulous unseen treasures from the Forbidden City in Beijing. Silks, scrolls and porcelain, it's the cream of the imperial art from the Qing dynasty of the late 17th and 18th centuries.
I think what's unusual is that we have a very large number of gorgeous paintings that illustrate palace life. These paintings don't exist outside the palace. They hung on palace walls, they recorded great state visits to the south of China. They are unique pieces of palace art, and they just aren't seen outside China.
The Mini is a classic. It's the most recognisable symbol of British motoring, inspiring more affection than the Rolls-Royce and more cult status than the Jag.
5 million of these little babies came off the production line and colonised the world. And even 50 years after the first model appeared, still the boldest, brightest, sexiest, nippiest thing on the road.
It's like no other car ever created. The Mini is not simply a design, it's a mobile work of art.